Shannon Watkins with the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal. Today, I am with Greg Wilbur. Greg is president and dean and one of the founders of New College Franklin in Tennessee. He has taught various topics at the college, including music, geometry, cosmology, moral philosophy, poetics, as well as preceptorials on the art of film, 20th century literature, hospitality and cooking, and the Quadrivium. In addition to his duties as president, Wilbur is the chief musician of Cornerstone Presbyterian Church and has authored and contributed to several books, numerous articles, and speaks regularly on the arts, worship, and education. Greg, thank you very much for speaking with me today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Wonderful. Well, to get started, could you tell us a little bit about New College Franklin? When was it founded and what is its core educational mission?
Yes, we just finished our 13th year. So we were officially recognized by the state of Tennessee as a college in 2009, after several years of paperwork to work through the system in that regard. But our goal is to be academically challenging, but also spiritual formation. And so our emphasis is on small classroom setting, on individual conversation, of dealing with original text, the great questions, the great books, the classical 7 liberal arts, the historic liberal arts, the 7 trivium and quadrivium, but with a theological foundation. And to do so in a community that is intentionally small and geared towards discipleship as well as for education.
Oh, wonderful. You said intentionally small. I'm just curious, what is the student population?
So we're right around 40.
Okay.
So fully grown, we intend to be around mid-60s because we want to be able to keep the conversation going around a single table. So when the freshmen come in, there's the opportunity to be known and to answer those questions individually that come up in class. But we also desire to see lots of other institutions like ours begin. And so we're in regular conversation with other people trying to do the same things. And that's a great joy, and not competition, but see that as the fields wide into harvest is a real need for this type of education, I think. And to see what we're doing here and have been doing multiply into other places would be a wonderful thing.
Certainly, that sounds excellent. New College Franklin doesn't accept federal funding. Can you tell us why and about some of the consequences of this decision?
Yeah, so from the very beginning, we wanted to make sure that we could operate freely as a religious institution with regards to what we hold as our core beliefs, without any government interference that might or might not come down the road. And so being able to be just free of that. The consequences of that is that, well, there are positive and negative consequences. Positive consequences, we don't have to worry about all of the ever-changing federal regulations and the pushing of social agenda through the process of tied to federal funds. The other side of that is we've managed to be able to keep tuition affordable because we also want our students to be able to graduate debt-free. And I think there's that. Federal funding goes up for education, tuition goes up. Federal funding goes up, tuition goes up. And you've got that artificial inflation going back and forth, whereas most of that money actually winds up in administrative costs of large institutions, whereas we keep tuition low and that cost goes towards actual education of the students. And so our tuition is just a little over $10,000 a year. And so students are able to work and make that amount of money. And then when they graduate, are able to be more entrepreneurial, to maybe take a ministry position or to consider something in a smaller town without having to find a large paying job just to finance and service their student loans and debt.
Excellent. That sounds great. Tell us a little bit about the integrated curriculum that the college offers. Students all earn the same degree, correct?
That's correct. This harkens back to the idea that the liberal arts were the foundation, that then students who go into other things. So, the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, quadrivium, we're seeing to then lead to philosophy and theology and to medicine and to law and to other skills. And so with 1 degree program, we're focusing on those tools that are able to equip students to do all sorts of variety of things. Now, the beauty of that is that with with a small class together reading the same things, the curriculum doesn't end with a class in a semester, because the conversation can continue even into the next course, even to the next year, between years, between different students. So we have older students saying, "Oh, you're at this point. You're reading this in this book," and I remember our conversation that we had. And so the conversation can continue in the hallways. Professors can refer to books that are being taught and talked about in other classes, or taught and taught in other years. And so there's this beautiful unity of what can happen with this ongoing conversation, the many facets of that over not just the course of a single term, but through the course of 4 years. And what we've also discovered is that our students, when they leave us, are incredibly well equipped to take their next steps, whether that's grad school or to teach or ministry or education, finance, politics, fundraising, medicine. We've had a couple of students go into the medical field as well. Entrepreneurial, we've had people start businesses and have been very successful just with the foundation that they've gotten through what seemingly is limited with 1 degree program, actually is very flexible in the current job market and enables them to do all sorts of things.
No, that really rings true with what we've been writing and researching about at the Martin Center. That's excellent. I want to speak specifically about the classics, the great works that your students study. Why is it important to wrestle with the great works, and what are some titles that the students read?
Right. I think one of the things about works that have stood the test of time is that's because they are asking and dealing with the questions that continue. And so it's not just that this work is dated from a particular era, but that the truth of what the text is getting at, what is honor, what is the polis, what does it mean to live ethically together, what is friendship, what is love, what is justice, and seeing how that question is addressed and how it's answered and how it's talked about in various eras gives us an opportunity to have students walk through that, judging their own presuppositions about when something is, but wrestling with the idea of truly understanding why they believe what they believe. So it's not, we don't lecture, it's conversation. It's not, here's the right answer, but here's what others have said. Now let's land on understanding why you believe what you believe. And here's our theological foundation to do so, but to own the answer and to own the question. And so those works give us an entry point. There's no perfect curriculum, there's no perfect book list. It's not really about reading, these particular checklist of books that, that's kind of the modernist mindset, right? You do these things and you input this, output this, and it's not about outputting a student in that regard. It's not so much about what a student's going to do, but who a student becomes through this process, and to see that formed within them. And so, we do read the classics with regards to, Homer and Plato and Aristotle, a lot of Plato and Aristotle, the Greek tragedies, the great works of the medieval period, all on up into the modern period with theology and philosophy and literature, but then also spending a good part of a year in geometry working through Euclid, and actually understanding what Euclid is getting at, and how he's understanding the idea of number, the ideas of harmonia, the 2 years in Greek, and a foundation of understanding biblical and systematic theology. So there's all the in writing as well, of course, logic, all these things to then become tools to be able to not only understand what they're reading, but able to express themselves and to be able to communicate with all sorts of whatever people come before them as they leave here and go out into their callings.
Well, that sounds great. Sign me up. Uh, You've touched on this, but what are some of graduates of New College Franklin? What are they up to? What pursuits do they go on to after they graduate?
Yeah, we have a variety, as I mentioned. We've got for such a small school, we had six of our graduates graduate with masters a year ago, last May. One of those is pursuing a doctorate as well. We've had students accepted to a variety of programs in terms of continued education. We also had students who teach in various schools in various places, banking, entrepreneurial. As I mentioned, we had one of our students who was very business minded, took what he learned here, researched, developed his own SEO company, eventually managed to sell that, but also in the meantime employed several other graduates and current students along the way, teaching them what he had learned and equipping them, and has done quite well for himself in that field. Politics, journalism, missions, um, medicine, yeah, as well. Yeah, we have a student currently doing a master's in a medical field.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. And for those students who are incoming, what is your advice for them?
Well, there's a lot of things that become self-selective in terms of choosing a college like ours. In terms of our faith, our intent on the liberal arts, the smallness of it as well. And so there's kind of a self-selective process. And so generally the people who are drawn towards what we're doing are those who understand the value of it already and who want to continue what they've already done, or to make up for something that they realize that they've lost, that they didn't get. And so our students are fairly motivated to do the reading, to do the writing, to do the extensive work that's necessary, because it is academically rigorous. But at the same time, it's also done in the joy of community. And so there's that you have to have that willingness to be known and to be in close proximity with and in community with others, and the joy that comes from that along the way. But to be able to do that together, and it's a beautiful thing, to not just be reading in isolation or even taking a class in isolation, but it's what everybody brings to the table. So even a professor teaching the same book, year after year, the conversation is always different because the students around the table are always different.
Right.
And so everybody has something to contribute to that, and everybody has something to learn from one another. And so it's the generosity of what Bonhoeffer talks about, the ministry of listening, being able to listen to one another and to not just get your point across, but to actually flow into conversation what somebody has said, and then to pick up that thought and to continue it along, and to learn the generosity and the charity and the heart of that as you discuss various works. And so it's that it's that humility too, that there's so many things that you don't know. One of the things I tell students is, if you always underline the passages of a book that you agree with or that support your own beliefs, then you're not really learning.
Mm.
You're just finding support and not actually being challenged to consider things differently, or to add a different perspective to see how that works into a more cohesive whole.
Certainly. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience about what makes your college distinctive in the higher ed landscape?
I think part of it is, as I mentioned before, the Quadrivium, that we are seriously pursuing the arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, as it's always been a part of our core curriculum. And that's unusual for most institutions. There's only a slight handful that even kind of considers those. But I think there's a lot of recovery that needs to be done there. And there's a great wealth there that actually I think helps shape the mind and also helps to shape virtue. And so that's a big distinctive about our own curriculum. But to be able to do the great books kind of conversation, but in the context of a small faith-based community, is also rather unique. And so all those combined together with the intentionality of mentoring and discipleship makes this a pretty special place. I'm grateful and humbled to be a part and to see students come through and to see how they learn and grow from when they arrive and when they leave and what they do from here.
Wonderful. Well, the Martin Center, all of us here at the Martin Center are very excited about what you're doing at New College Franklin. It sounds fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Greg, for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.